This is my BMW M120 xDrive, which I'm due to trade in tomorrow for a new M140i. I bought the car new in 2013 and it's covered 26,000 miles without any issues at all. I took out smart insurance and a 5-year service plan when it was new, and I've used the former once as when a cyclist leaned up against the car and then pushed himself off from it and scratched the paintwork with his pedals. But otherwise the car has only ever had routine servicing, and the tyres are all wearing at the same rate and have another 1,000 to 1,500 miles in them. Despite having 181 horsepower and 280 foot-pounds stroke 380 newton meters of torque, with all the real world performance you could ever really want, the car still returns a genuine 56 miles to the gallon on a tank full of fuel. And also, being an xDrive variant, unlike other rear-wheel drive Beamers, this vehicle is not only capable of movement on snowy roads, but is even more tractable than the more usual front-wheel drive hatches of today. It really, quite frankly, has been a pleasure to own and drive, and with a new purchase price at a shade under 30,000 and a trade-in of only, dare I say, 11 grand, you might ask yourself, what on earth am I selling it for? And the answer is, if I'm totally honest, three, I guess. One, I've got to be nuts. Two, at 56 years of age, I've always really wanted a 6-cylinder BMW, but never owned one. And the current trend is quite clearly towards vehicles with fewer cylinders, less capacity, and highly efficient turbochargers designed by kind of green-fingered eco-pansies. And so I figured that if I wanted to own a 6-cylinder BMW, now was probably going to be one of the last chances I'd ever get. And finally, I guess, if you want something and you've got the money, then why not? Life decisions don't have to be justifiable. I guess wants and desires are almost invariably irrational, and besides, life isn't a dress rehearsal, and once you're dead, you're going to stay that way for a bloody long time. And so in a nutshell, reason 3 is, what the hell? Anyway, before I collect and review the M140, a few anecdotal comments. I had a hell of a problem insuring the new car because, as a new model only just released, most insurance companies either don't have it listed or have it listed but no performance data or insurance grouping available to them, and simply wouldn't insure me. My own insurer, Hastings, were aware of the 140, but with no formal insurance group for it. They offered me a pro rata refund of my existing policy on this car, and the only option for me then was to use BMW insurance. Not exactly, because BMW themselves had the same problem. I had to insure the 140 as an M1 coupe, which didn't please me greatly, and they quoted me a full £130 per annum more than they'd already quoted me on an M135. I guess the M140's got the same, very similar performance statistics to the M1 coupe, but the M1 coupe is, at the end of the day, an out-and-out, balls-out performance car, and it is a coupe. So maybe next year the insurance on the M140 might be a little bit cheaper. Who knows? Anyway, second point is, I guess most folks with the money to buy one of these cars isn't going to be too worried about the road fund licence. But beware, this car, the new car, the M140, is currently £230 per annum to tax. But as from next April next year, and after the first year on the road, newly registered vehicles will have an ongoing vehicle excise duty of only £140, which will surely hit the second-hand value of vehicles purchased between now, or the release date of the M140, and next April. Just a thought for those of you who are budding accountants, I guess. And finally, in buying the new car, I was subject to the usual high-pressure sales tactics for the commission-based free add-ons, namely a finance deal that I don't need, but BMW insisted, put a lot of pressure on me to take it out. But I'm assured that I can cancel the day after taking delivery. And then there's SuperGuard, Gap insurance, and Smart insurance. I kind of accept that for a daily driver, the Smart insurance might prove worthwhile, and in fact I did use the Smart insurance on this vehicle, where the cyclist did some damage to it, but I'm not going to bother with the new vehicle. I can underwrite the Gap insurance myself. I think if you've had to borrow a whole load of money maybe to purchase a vehicle, then the Gap insurance has got a lot going for it, but But SuperGuard is just plain pish, to be honest, and it will pay for the premium for SuperGuard would pay for a lifetime supply of Maguire's finest, which is where I'm going to invest my money. So anyway, one last look at the 120 XD. It's been a fantastic vehicle, no complaints whatsoever, but a man's got to do what a man's got to do. So I guess we need to fire her up, take her outside, and I'll take you guys over the car. This is more than a mere engine tweak on the M140, and the N55 six-cylinder engine has indeed been replaced with an entirely new B58 series unit. Key differences are an all-new aluminium engine block and cylinder head, and liquid-to-air intercooler integrated into the inlet manifold. This has allowed BMW to eke an extra 14 brake horsepower from the unit, which the average road driver simply won't notice, but it's a big but. Peak torque is raised from 450 newton meters to 500 newton meters and is available from 1500 RPM through to 4500 RPM. It isn't power that limits the rate of progress from a standstill, but more the ability to put down the power onto the road. And this is amply demonstrated by the fact that the manual 140 completes the 0 to 62 miles an hour dash in 4.8 seconds, a full 0.3 seconds quicker than the outgoing model. But when linked to the 8-speed ZF Auto, the time is reduced to 4.6 seconds. And if this isn't swift enough for you, then available in the UK for the first time, the ZF X-Drive variant, which will complete the sprint in a mere 4.4 seconds. This manual version comes complete with downshift throttle blipping as a standard feature, and having driven it back from the dealers, I can attest to the fact that it works very well and it makes downshifting extremely smooth. That the purists amongst you might prefer to do that yourselves, but I'm lazy and it works really well. My understanding is that the more recent 135s also came with this feature, and I have to say I really like it. Other key differences on this engine is the N55 uses steel liners, and as such you can rebore it, but this doesn't. The bores, they're not Nickersill lined, they've got some sort of ferrous lining, but the bores are part of the casting of the block itself, and so you can't rebore this engine. Not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I remember on motorcycles when they brought Nickersill bores in, it was touted largely to aid cooling and reduce friction. But there you go, this engine differs in that respect. Another difference on the B58 series engine is its thermal insulation. Supposedly, after you run the engine, it stays warm for much longer, so that if you then leave the car for an hour or two and go out to it, there's a lot of residual heat in the engine, and thus the theory goes that as most of the wear in an engine occurs when the engine's cold, you can reduce long-term wear on the engine by virtue of the fact that on a greater percentage of occasions when you go to start it, the engine will have some residual warmth in it. A further upside to the performance boost is a claimed 7% improvement in fuel economy and a reduction in vehicle excise duty from band J for the M135 to band I for the manual. Or put another way, a road tax reduction from £270 to £230 per annum. But as I mentioned earlier, as from April next year, this is of no consequence since new M140s will have an annual duty of £140, which is going to affect residuals on cars like mine, which have been registered now. Another point of interest about the new B58 engine for the tuners amongst you, I'm led to believe that the new integrated intercooler arrangement is far less amenable to tweaking than the unit fitted onto the M135. And so anyone looking to improve the power output of their M140 may well have to look elsewhere other than the intercooler. The wheels on the 140 are the 436M 18-inch units as on the 135. They come with Michelin Pilot Super Sports as standard, but you can, if you wish, specify run flats as a no-cost option. It's worth noting that modern wheels have a safety lip and will accommodate either run flats or normal tyres, and so if you wanted to change to run flats at a later date, you could do so without having to worry about changing your wheels. A number of owners upgrade their wheels to M Sport 19-inch units and then sell their standard items on eBay, and I took the opportunity to buy a set of 4 brand new unused wheels complete with Super Sports and pressure sensors for all of £1,000. My plan is to mount winter tyres on the spare wheels because, for those of you who don't know better, rear-wheel drive BMWs in the snow are marginally less mobile than the Eiffel Tower, and it's not so much that they don't handle, they barely move, even on the flat. So if you do any winter or cold weather travelling, you either need winter tyres or an X-Drive model. I learned myself through painful experience. Fitting winter tyres is not as straightforward as you might imagine because the rear tyre is a 240 by 35 and there is only one tyre made which fits, the Pirelli Soto Zero, and it is very expensive. However, all is not lost because a quick check of the rim size confirms the wheel is well suited to a 225, and so my plan is to mount the same size 225s on all 4 corners on my winter wheels. Now, the standard wheels are now fitted with tyre pressure monitoring sensors which feed pressure information to the car. Previously, and certainly the case with my 120D, this function used the ABS system to monitor wheel speed and thus detect a wheel with reduced pressure. I've mixed feelings about the new system since battery life is limited to around 5 years and batteries cannot be replaced. A new genuine BMW sensor is going to cost around £60 per wheel, which is not an insignificant cost, but on the plus side, many aftermarket sensors are available at a fraction of the cost and will work with the BMW system. The benefit of the new system is that it is able to tell you exactly what your individual tyre pressures are, whereas the previous ABS-based version would only highlight a situation where one wheel was deflated relative to the others. In other words, it would fail to activate if all 4 tyres were deflated by the same amount. You could argue this is an improvement in safety, although not entirely the case if you manually check your pressures periodically. Moving on to the side of the car, and you'll have to take my word for it, the rear as well, I opted for badge deletion, and so the M badge normally on the front wing and the M140i badge on the rear tailgate have been removed. I simply prefer the cleaner look, and I guess it's a matter of personal preference. Now, this is going to be a contentious comment, but you'll note there is no protection for the sills rearwards of both front and back wheels. BMW do make mud flaps to fit the F20, but not for cars with M Sport bumpers. Now, if you research various forums, you will discover that owners have fitted front and in some cases rear mud flaps to their 135s and dispute the official BMW line that the flaps do not fit. Well, I'm going to advise between the two. The simple facts are that the sill and body profiles, both front and back, are slightly different on the M Sport to the standard F20. The mud flaps can be made to fit with a little persuasion, but you will get gaps between the flaps and the bodywork. less noticeable on the front than the back, but present nonetheless. An alternative for those worried about damage to the paintwork is to use protection film, but this isn't without problems, and in a high wear environment you would have to be prepared to replace it periodically. Speaking personally, and again I'm aware it's a matter of personal taste and preference, I will probably fit flaps on the front and a small area of film on the rear. The wing mirror caps and the outer surrounds to the radiator grille on the 140 are satin silver as standard, as indeed they were on the 135. I'm not sure I like the effect that much, but carbon caps are available from BMW, but at a price. Alternatively, I believe the standard F20 units will fit and are available in gloss black as an option on these cars, and so could also be fitted. Alternatively, aftermarket parts are available in both finishes or can be supplied colour matched to your car. I personally opted for anti-dazzle folding mirrors on this car, but be aware on both the 135 and 140 this is an option and not standard fit. The car is available as both 3 and 5 door. I went for the 5 door because although I rarely carry passengers, I find it useful to open the rear doors and drop my stuff on the back seats, and of course on the odd occasion that I do take passengers, 5 doors is just so much more practical, if a little less pleasing on the eye. Comfort access is an option on both the 135 and 140. I've not had it before, but did specify on this car. Sun protection glass is also an option on the 140 as it was on the 135, which gives you tinted windows on the rear doors and on the rear tailgate. Coming to the rear of the car, the twin exhaust is a single unit as standard, but the rear box can be removed by judicious use of a hacksaw and then replaced with an M Sport performance box for around £600 to £700. This makes no claims for performance gains, but debatably does produce an improved sound with less back pressure, resulting in lots of crackles and pops on the overrun. Interestingly, when you start the car from cold, the valve in the rear box restricts output to the right hand side only to speed the warm-up process, and thus you'll notice steam coming from the right pipe only, which might lead some owners to conclude there is something wrong. But indeed, the valve does open within a few moments and all is restored to normal. You'll notice a distinct change in the engine though as this happens. Let's take a look inside the car. The boot on the 140 is a half decent size, and the battery lives underneath the floor panel there, along with the tyre inflator kit and tyre sealant in the event that you have a puncture. And there's no jack that comes with the vehicle, although this is available as an optional extra. In fact, I've kept the jack from my 120. I don't like the use of sealants, if I'm brutally honest, and I very rarely carry much in the trunk of the car, so most of the time I'll probably run around with one of my other wheels as a spare and the jack in the back. On the left hand side is a panel which conceals the locking wheel nut key, triangle and first aid kit. And one other point that's worth mentioning: a hatchback, fundamental to a hatchback, is the practicality issue. Believe it or not, on this car the rear seats do not fold down as standard, and you actually have to specify as an optional extra through loading. And if you specify through loading, then you can either lower the right hand seat back down on its own, or the centre and the left hand one down on their own, or all three together. If you fail to specify that as an option, then the practicality of your car is affected significantly because you can't lower the rear seats. I forget what it was, 175 quid. It's peanuts, and to be honest with you, it's a pretty serious omission on behalf of BMW. You'd be pretty fed up, I think, if you didn't realise and ordered the car and found you couldn't lower the rear seats. The 140 now comes with sat-nav as standard, although this can be upgraded to the Pro version if required as part of the professional media package. Likewise the sound system, neither of which did I bother with on this car. Additional options are all as per the 135 and include electric seats, sunroof, park assist, reversing camera, to name but a few. The only extra I specified on this car was the M Sport adaptive suspension, which I felt was worth having. And a note on the price: I was initially offered a paltry £1,500 discount by BMW on the basis that I signed a deal there and then following my test drive, but I opted to leave it. I checked the value of my own vehicle using WeBuyAnyCar.com just to ensure I was getting a reasonable trade-in, and then went to a price comparison site for the new car. it was clear that I could get a discount of up to £6,500 from a franchise dealer from elsewhere, and so informed my local dealer that I would prefer to use them if they would match the price. They wriggled and squirmed, wriggled a bit more, but eventually came pretty close to matching the price, and the deal was done, and I'm pleased with the outcome. So in the end, the package I actually went for was 5-door in Estoril Blue with black Dakota leather, driver comfort package, which is parking sensors in the rear, and actually you have to additionally specify if you want them at the front, which I did. Adaptive M suspension, model designation deletion, comfort access, trim designation deletion, sun protection glass, exterior mirrors folding with anti-dazzle, through loading system, aluminium hexagon interior with black high gloss finisher, and headlight washers. Well, I picked the car up this morning. I've only done 18 miles, so it's a bit difficult to comment that much, other than to say the car feels incredibly tractable and punchy at low revs. Much like a diesel, if I'm brutally honest, the difference being, of course, that it holds on to that torque throughout the rev range. And although it is only 14 brake horsepower more than the M135, in pure outright acceleration terms, it's a significant improvement on the 135. The fact that the outright power is only 14 brake horsepower more suggests that the 135 probably revs higher. The old N55 engine revs higher than the B58. But I prefer an engine, actually, if I'm brutally honest, that pushes you up from the bottom rather than draws you up from the upper extremes of its rev range, and that's one reason why I enjoyed driving a diesel, because they're so tractable. People have made comments about the 135 having a notchy gearbox. Well, I kind of know what people mean, but it isn't real. I don't think of it as notchy, as more mechanically precise. And I feel the gearbox on this, even though I haven't driven it very far, the gearbox in this is really no different to the 120. And the one thing that I do feel that you can do to improve the gear changes is pause very briefly in between gears. So when you go from third to fourth, don't whip it through in one continuous motion. Third, neutral, fourth. Go from fourth to fifth, fourth, neutral, fifth, rather than trying to do it in one sweeping motion. And I'm pretty sure that people who complain of their gearboxes being notchy, if they were to do that, they would find that it's significantly improved. The auto blip on this, I can't remember whether I mentioned it earlier on in my video. The auto blip on this is really good, and it makes gear changes super smooth. The rev matching feature. So, I'm over £18,000 poorer than I was this time yesterday, and so far I'm pleased with my purchase, but time will tell whether I spent my money wisely.